This is the Dope Farm Podcast. Welcome back to the Dope Farm Podcast. This is Win, and I'm your host. So I want to start out episode 6 with a thank you to Phil and Andrew for having me on the Matter of Facts podcast this past week. It was a pleasure to be on there with them. We had a great time. We talked more about eating and losing weight and we really did about anything else, but it was a really good time. And if you get a chance, go over there and check out the Matter of Facts podcast with Andrew and Phil. They do a great job. It's a lot of fun, and definitely check them out. It's well worth listening to. I also want to thank James Walton from the Prepper Broadcasting Network for allowing me to participate on his site in his open bunker Friday night. I think it went off pretty well. Hopefully his numbers show that and will invite me back on. I want to continue to thank John Jeffers over at the Contra Radio Network for posting my podcast there and getting my information out. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to continue with George Washington's rules of civility and decent behavior. And so we're up to number 4. And rule 4 states, in the presence of others, sing not to yourself with a humming noise, nor drum your fingers or your feet. And I don't know how many people have been in a situation where they're in a meeting or something like that, and someone's continuously clicking a pen. Somewhere I go once a month on occasion. I try to make it every month. But there's a gentleman there. He's an older gentleman. And he always has a clicking type pen. And he'll sit there through the whole meeting and click that pen. It drives me bananas. So, I mean, that's just, they probably couldn't foresee that. But I can see where he's getting from. You're in a crowded space and you might have someone there. It's quiet and they're tapping a pencil, or they're tapping their feet, or they're humming a tune, or they're singing to themselves or something like that. So, just think about your surroundings. It goes back again to the situational awareness and knowing who you're talking to and where you're at. And just be aware of that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into the weed of the week. So this week, I'm looking at the elderberry. And I'm going back to Green Dean and eattheweeds.com. And the elderberry, which is also known as the sambuca, is a great plant. It's very prevalent in my area here in eastern North Carolina. It grows everywhere. And I just want to say something real quick before I get started reading Dean's article here. And I really want, there's been some stuff I've read and heard people talk about mixing up elderberry and pokeweed. And I personally don't understand how people can mix them up because they are so different. A elderberry plant has a woody stem, as you'll learn in the article, where a pokeberry is a very soft, hollow stem. It stays green. It doesn't get woody. The berries are just completely different. They grow in different clumps and or different form, where an elderberry has these nice kind of uniform clumps The flowers are completely different. And it's just, I don't know. Once you figure it out, it's not hard. So just keep that in mind. Take a look. I might go over the poke later. Poke is edible, but it's the leaves. Poke can be used for dyes and things of that nature. So I'm not going into that right now, but I'm going to go ahead and go into the elderberry. And I'm not going to read the whole article because he gets into some recipes about making wine and things of that nature. And if you really want to read about that kind of stuff, make sure you go to my website, thedopefarmpodcast.com, and check under episode 6. And I'll have a link to his website there. So his article, his article is titled Elderberries, Red, White, and Blue. Sambuca's Fine for Elderberry Wine. Start your new year off right with a glass of elderberry wine or elderberry blossom champagne. Don't have any? Well, next year then. I started mine off right. I bottled 6 gallons of elderberry wine, 6 gallons of cherry wine, and left over a gallon of apple wine this morning. Most of the wine, but not all of it, made it into the bottles, as it should be. After all, it is New Year's. I am cooking the goose with wild rice stuffing mixed with chopped pecans, tangerines right off the tree. Alas, bachelors dine alone, but well. Back to the elderberries. Incidentally, I am writing now about only black or deep purple elderberries. Read about red elderberries at the bottom of the page. Elderberries are easy to like. They are user-friendly. Jam, jelly, pies, syrup, schnapps, brandies, and wine can be made from them. Flowers are also edible and can be used in pancakes and muffins, just dipped in batter and fried. They also make nice tea or a refreshing elder blow champagne. Elderflower water is also used in perfumes and sweets. Many writers say raw elderberries have an unpleasant taste. The ones in my yard do not, but they can change from location to location, shrub to shrub. Most agree they do not need to be cooked if you are going to eat more than just a few out of hand. That's because they have a small amount of cyanide-producing glycosides, which are released upon digestion, but so do loquats. Professor Julia Morton, who was the first, middle, and last word about poisonous plants in warm climates, especially Florida, says fully ripe blackberries are not toxic, and you can eat as many as you like. She adds, though, that their flavor is moderated by drying. And in fact, I have a large jar of dried elderberries and I sprinkle them in many things when cooking. Boiling or baking certainly takes care of any toxic issues, as does drying raw berries. The Cuscus Indians considered elderberries as a scarcity food only. Incidentally, the elderberry bush sheds a lot of hollow stems that insects like to live in. Watch out for them on the plant and under your feet while picking elderberries. Oh, elderberries do not have thorns. If you think you have an elderberry and it has thorns, you have a Hercules club. Do not eat those seeds. As for my personal experience with black elderberries, I do not have a sweet tooth, which makes my Greek relatives wonder if I'm adopted. But my favorite immediate use for elderberries is pies, though I have to add an acid like vinegar or lemon juice. The great thing about elderberry pie is it's seasonal and rare. You can't buy one. It's not processed, edible non-food stuff we call food. It is the real deal and delicious with texture similar to blackberry pie. If you have enough elderberries, I make wine. In between, I make schnapps. I might add that Dr. Morton agrees with the 14th century European comment that young elderberry shoots may be cooked like asparagus and eaten. I haven't eaten any elderberry shoots, but I have plenty in my yard. About 5 years ago, I went to a vacant lot and dug up a couple of young elderberry shrubs. They have grown into a clump of them in my yard. The odd thing is they don't live too long, just 2 or 3 years each, but they are always sending up shoots, so the clump is slowly moving as new trees grow and old ones die off. The clump is migrating about 2 feet a year to the north. There is a road in its path in about 10 years. Stand by for update. Elderberries are nutritious, are packed with antioxidants, and have more vitamin C than oranges or tomatoes. They also have vitamin A, calcium, thiamine, niacin, twice the calories of cranberries, and 3 times the protein of blueberries. They put grapes to shame, and man is not the only consumer. Over 4 dozen kinds of birds like elderberries, as well as occasional rodent and butterfly. Bears really like them, ripe or unripe, and the deer and moose will nibble on them. Elderberry is in the honeysuckle family and have too many medicinal uses to mention here. They are one of the mainstays of herbalism and home remedies. Wherever it grows, it has been the local pharmacy. By the way, its botanical name is Sambucus candicensis. Sambuca comes from the Greek word the sambuc, a musical instrument believed to heal the spirit. In Europe, elderberry wood is used for making instruments. Candicensis is from Canada or North America. As for elderberry recipes, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of them on the internet. Books, in fact. You can look them up as need be, but I will give you a hint. Freeze the cluster of berries. They will separate from their branches much easier and cleaner, and do not leave you totally recipeless. Here is a concoction from the 1400s. Take elderberry flowers and grind them into cow's milk. Add flour, heat until it thickens. Seems they liked their recipe short back then. If you have just a few elderberries, a pound or so, try this. And he goes on about elderberry schnapps here. You can read about that. Then elderberry wine, he goes into that detail. I'm not really going to read into that. And then he covers red elderberries, which you can also read that. So there's a lot of information here. Let's see. Let's go down here. Yeah, he goes into a lot of the red elderberry stuff, which I'm not too concerned about. I'm not really going to go into all that. So anyway, the Green Dean's itemized plant profile. Identification. Shrub to small tree, woody stem, 5-lobed flowers in clusters, white, 5 stamen, leaves, pentally compound, 5 to 9, toothed, opposite. Berries are round, about 1/8 of an inch, glossy, and black. Time of the year. Can blossom and fruit throughout the year in Florida, but favors the spring and early summer. And that's how it is here in eastern North Carolina. Environment. Roadsides, thickets, damp areas, low hammocks, marshes, and canal banks. Method of preparation. When fully ripe, the fruit can be eaten raw or cooked, but go light on the raw ones. Drying berries moderate their flavor. See the warning above on the red berries. Okay, so like I say, I didn't go through the whole article there. There is a lot of good information. There's some, there are some comments down here, so definitely go and try to read these. Like I say, these are, again, article was from about 2011, so it's been around for a little bit. There's a lot of good information. So the next thing, and he kind of touched on it, is that the elderberry plant is not only can it be made into jellies and jams and things of that nature as an edible plant, it has also been used as a medicinal plant, and you can actually buy Sambuca tablets like off of Amazon or any place you buy home remedy stuff. And they say that if you take them, they will help boost your immune system. So over here at WebMD, and if you want to see it, go check out go to the website and look at the link. I'm going to read the overview. Overview information this is again from WebMD. Elderberry is a dark purple berry from European elder trees. The berries are used to make medicine. Do not confuse elderberry with the American elder or elderflower or dwarf elder. Some people take elderberry by mouth for a common cold, the flu, influenza, and H1N1 swine flu. It is also taken by mouth for HIV or AIDS and boosting the immune system. Elderberry is also taken by mouth for sinus pain, back and leg pain, sciatica, nerve pain, neuralgia, and chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS. Some people also take elderberry by mouth for hay fever, cancer, as a laxative for constipation, to increase urine flow, or to cause sweating. It is also used for heart disease, high cholesterol, headache, toothache, and weight loss. Some people apply elderberry to the inside of the mouth for gum inflammation. Elderberry fruit is also used for making wine and food flavoring. How does it work? Elderberry might affect the immune system. Elderberry seems to have an activity against viruses, including flu, and might reduce inflammation. So that was just the basic overview. I'm going to go to the next tab here and look at some of the uses. Uses and effectiveness. Possibly effective for constipation. Drinking a tea from elderberry and other ingredients seem to increase the number of stools passed by people who are constipated. The flu, or also called influenza, a specific elderberry juice syrup seems to relieve flu symptoms and reduce the length and time a flu lasts when taken by mouth within 48 hours of the first symptoms. Taking elderberry lozenges within 24 hours of the first symptoms also seem to reduce flu symptoms. Relief seems to occur in 2 to 4 days of treatment for most people. Taking the product that contains elderberry juice and echinacea also seems to relieve symptoms and reduce the length of time the flu lasts. It seems to work similar to the prescription of Tamiflu. So there's also a list of insufficient evidence for heart disease, common cold, gum inflammation, high cholesterol, and cancer, chronic fatigue syndrome, constipation, H1N1, AIDS, hay fever, headache, nerve pain, toothache, weight loss, and other conditions. So it says there's not enough evidence to really cover that. So I'm not going to read through all of those. And these are some of the things that they talk about are things that I've heard and read about. And I've taken, when it starts getting cooler and you start hearing about the flu going around, I will actually start taking Sambuca tablets to help boost the immune system. And I want to say that it works fairly well. I can only say that I maybe got sick one time this year or this past year. And I mean, I have little kids. My daughter goes to preschool, and those are basically germ factories. And so my children were constantly sick all this year. And I think I only got sick one time. So elderberry, in that context, as far as the medicinal side, is something to look at. It's very useful. It's edible. And it's very pervasive here in Eastern North Carolina where I live. So take a look around. Again, I referenced the Peterson's Field Guide in my last podcast, but I was actually mistaken. It was another field guide that I used that I went back and added into the show notes on episode 5. So go back and take a look. Make sure you get the right one. There is a Peterson's Field Guide that I also linked to. They are very good, a lot of pictures, and they have one specifically for the East. So if you want to really get into wild edible plants, those field guides are excellent. So let's keep on moving here. And my main topic of today was suggested by a gentleman that I go to church with, and I'll just say his name is Mark. I'm not going to say his last name. But he was like, can you do something on hurricane preparedness? So I said, sure. That sounds like a great idea for a podcast. So what I've done is I've gone to ready.gov. And see, ready.gov, there's FEMA and NOAA. And so what I'm going to do is start out with just what is a hurricane? And this is coming from the National Ocean Service, a division of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. What is a hurricane? A hurricane is a type of storm called a tropical cyclone, which forms over tropical or subtropical waters. A tropical cyclone is a rotating low-pressure weather system that has organized thunderstorms but no fronts, a boundary separating two air masses of different densities. Tropical cyclones with a maximum sustained surface winds of less than 39 miles an hour are called tropical depressions. Those with a maximum sustained winds of 39 miles per hour or higher are called tropical storms. When the storm's maximum sustained winds reach 74 miles per hour, it's called a hurricane. The Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale is a 1 to 5 rating or category based on hurricane's maximum sustained wind. The highest category, the greater the hurricane's potential for property damage. Hurricanes originate in the Atlantic Basin, which includes the Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, Eastern North Pacific Ocean, and less frequently in the North Pacific Ocean. A 6-year rotating list of names, updated and maintained by the World Meteorological Organization, is used to identify these storms. Hurricane season begins on June 1st and ends on November 30th, although hurricanes can and have occurred outside this time frame. NOAA's Hurricane Center predicts and tracks these massive storm systems, which occur on average 12 times a year in the Atlantic Basin. As a world leader in hurricane research, NOAA strives to understand the mechanics of these complex storms in order to protect people, property, commerce, and natural resources. So that is just the basic definition of what a hurricane is. And if you go to, again, go back to the website, look for links to ready.gov. And there's a lot of good information there on how to prepare yourself for a hurricane. And the best time to prepare for a hurricane is now, not 36, 48 hours before it happens. Because if you've ever lived in a hurricane-prone area, you will know that the store shelves will get raked clean. I'm an advocate of being prepared for any disaster, not just, hurricanes or, what may come, but you need to be prepared for I can't say every, but as many plausible things as possible. So don't get hyper focused on hurricane season. You need to just generally be prepared. In the book that I referenced last podcast, the Jonathan Hollerman book, is a great reference. It's not a short-term reference, but it's just a good, general, all-around good reference for preparedness. So, a couple of things that I typed up in my show notes here is things that you want to get. Some of my thoughts on hurricane preparedness. Someone who's been through lots of hurricanes here in the East, you need to be aware of these things. So, number one, Know your area. If you live in a flood-prone area, you should be aware. Check out the Flood Smart link in my posting here, especially if you're new to an area. If you've lived there for a while, you've never seen any flooding, you're in good shape. If you don't know, ask your neighbors. If you've never been through a major hurricane in your area, ask your neighbors. People that have lived there for a while will know if there's any issues. They can probably also tell you what kind of hazards you may face in the sense of blocked roads and things of that nature. What kind of structure do you live in? Is it a house? Is it a trailer, an apartment? These are important things to know. If you live in a regular house that's been there for a while, you're probably in good shape. You know, you want to be able to have a space in the interior of the home to kind of set up as a fallback area to maybe put a few supplies in, some food, things of that nature, just in case you have to kind of retreat to the middle of the house. Next, you want to know what the evacuation routes in your area are, possible shelters, things of that nature. If you have to leave, you need to pre-plan the direction you're going to travel. If you know that there's a creek or something that crosses a road and you've had, 18 inches of rain or, 20 inches of rain in a short period of time, those roads may be flooded. And so you need to know your way around, know how to get out of places. There were people down in Wilmington, North Carolina that were trapped for days. I mean, Wilmington was basically an island for a while. There was a route that people could get in, but the government was really, the state and FEMA, they were kind of keeping that really, really quiet, so that not everybody would be trying to get back post-storm. Next is have a couple of weeks worth of non-perishable food, and as much water as you can possibly store. Have canned foods, things of that nature that you do not need to do a lot of preparation on, maybe just heating them up. Again, water. Have a way to filter water or store as much water as you possibly can. The general rule of thumb is 1 gallon of water per person per day. And that is just for drinking and food preparation, not cleaning and hygiene. You must have water. You can only live 3 days without water. Now that may not be for everyone, but generally saying 3 days, if you don't get water, you're done for. Okay. So look into some sort of filtration system. The Katadines are good. I have a MSR water filter. It's a pump style water filter. It works really, really well. And that will, I don't know about the Katadines, but the MSR has an activated charcoal filter, which will actually remove chemicals. So that's something that you really need to be aware of. If you can afford it, the big Berkey water filters are just awesome from what I understand. I would love to have one. It's kind of on my list of wants, but it's not high priority. If you live on a place that has a well, make sure you have a generator that you can use to pump that well. I'm going to cover that a little bit further down. But I mean, if nothing else, man, water is really relatively inexpensive. You can buy a gallon of water from the grocery store. Here locally, we have Food Lions, and you can buy a gallon of water for about 89 cents. So 15, 20 gallons, put them up, man. And then you have some containers that you can also gather water if you need to. If nothing else, look at the Sawyer mini filters that you can get at Walmart. They're better than nothing. I don't think they have one that will filter chemicals, but if you're catching, water coming off your roof or something like that, unless you got to be careful if you're collecting rainwater off a roof that has asphalt shingles. So just keep that in mind. Water. I just can't stress that enough. Water is so important. Have the means to prepare your food. Have something, some way to heat up food. Even if it's just a propane cylinder and one of those little screw on top burners, it's better than nothing. Or if you have a gas grill, make sure you have plenty of gas to prepare that with. Or a grill with a burner. A Coleman stove would be a great addition. You can use the small little propane cylinders, or you can get an adapter to use the larger grill tanks. They would be great to have. And you can also boil water if need be. You have water of questionable purity. You can at least you can kill bacteria and protozoa and stuff like that. So boiling water is a good idea. So if possible, if your pocketbook allows, get a generator. Generators can be invaluable. They can save the stuff that you have in a freezer or a refrigerator, keep it from melting. You don't have to run it constantly, but if you can run it for an hour or so or a certain amount of time to keep the coolness down. Don't expect to run an air conditioner. You might be able to run a couple of fans or something, and you got to make sure you have plenty of gas, plenty of fuel, propane, whatever your generator runs off. Make sure you have plenty of fuel to last, because you never know when you may or may not be able to get it. Have plenty of batteries. It's my last thought. Having one of those little USB chargers is an invaluable thing. I have one. I carry it every day. It's an Anchor brand. I think it's like a 20,000 milliamp hour battery. They can range anywhere from $25 to $150 depending on brand. Get one that's got a little power indicator. And I didn't put this in my notes, but if you have DeWalt tools or Milwaukee tools or any of those, especially the 20 volt lithium batteries, they make an adapter that slides right on the battery, and you can actually use your tool batteries for charging USB. So keep that in mind. Keep a lookout for that. Also have various AA, AAA, C, D, just depending on what you have. I have a lot of stuff that takes a CR123. I try to keep those stocked up. And a note on batteries, if you can afford it, or if you have something that you're not going to use all the time every day until you run the batteries down, lithium batteries are a good choice, especially for something that you may have to store, because lithium batteries will not leak like regular alkaline batteries will. And I've had too many things. I've got a little flashlight sitting right here in front of me that the batteries leaked and basically has pretty much ruined the thing. I have a wrist mounted GPS, and the only thing I will use in it is lithium batteries, because I've learned my lesson there. So that pretty much is a very down and dirty hurricane preparedness thing. It's by no means a comprehensive be all, know all ending to hurricane preparedness, but go to my website, check it out, the dopefarmpodcast.com, and their episode 6, there's some good links there. And once you get into ready.gov/hurricane, you can find a lot of that stuff. You can find flood maps. If you Google search flood maps of your state, you can find a lot of good information, 500-year flood plains, things of that nature. There's a lot of very good information if you will take the time, sit down, make a plan, and prepare yourself and your family, whether it's knowing where you are, knowing about flooding, possibility of flooding, keep an eye on the weather, know what's going on, have some food put up. You need to have food and water. If you are just in a general preparedness mindset, you need to go ahead and have start working on building up your 1 year food supply. 1 year of food supply. And so just, again, it's general preparedness. Get it in your mind. Stop procrastinating. Start building your plan. And I'll look around and see, maybe I'll do a podcast on someone that has started a plan and how to work up your preparedness plan. And again, not just for hurricane, but just preparedness in general. Because like I've stated previously, if something bad happens and it's a nationwide event, whether it's an economic collapse or an EMP or something of major like that, the government is not going to be coming. The government's not going to be there to help you. You are responsible for yourself. And so that's going to close that out for now. So the Gear Hoard Gear Closet for this week, for this episode, is medical supplies. Have medical supplies. And this goes into the hurricane preparedness also. Having some medical supplies on hand can be invaluable. So this may seem like a reoccurring theme on my site and on my podcast, and it will be, and I'll continue to talk about it because it's something that I believe is that important. I'm about to embark on a T&E, which stands for Testing and Evaluation of several ankle medical holsters or pouches or whatever you want to call them. I have 4 that I'm pretty sure are on the way. I know guarantee of 2 that will be here Monday, the 10th of 2019. And as my previous post, I submitted requests to lots of makers, and I've gotten a pretty good response. And so I'm hoping within the next week or so, I might have half a dozen of these things to test, and I might get over my head before I know it, but I'm going to make a concerted effort and put in as much effort as I can to make sure that I do a proper test and evaluation. I want to give these people who have donated some of these things, some I've had to purchase, they've donated them, and I want to be fair and as clear and concise as I possibly can. I want to give these guys a fair shake. They're investing a piece of them into me to be able to give you information that I can hopefully provide a good idea of what my opinion is on the best ones. So I've got one of the gentlemen who is an inventor of one of these things, that he said he'd be willing to come on the podcast. So once I've got figured out the best way to do interviews, I'm going to call him up and be like, hey man, let's record a podcast, talk about why you invented your device. So I'm really looking forward to getting that started. It's going to take a little while, I'm pretty sure. But I'm going to try to do a weekly update, possibly. I'll talk about it maybe under this segment, and I will hopefully continually post the information on my website and on Facebook about how I'm progressing. For now, though, get some medical supplies. Go to, if nothing else, go to Walmart or Dollar General or whatever. Get some gauze pads. Get some Ace wraps. You can use those things to create pressure dressings. Get some rolled gauze or Curlex. Again, it is relatively inexpensive if you buy it a little bit at the time. When you get into the pre-made commercial bandages and things like that, it gets a little bit more expensive. But even still, like the Israeli bandages or some of the H&H minis or the NAR compression bandages, they're not really that expensive. I mean, they're about $6 to $10 a piece. But buy one here, buy one there. Get a tourniquet. Get a good quality tourniquet. There have been some more that have been released by TCCC for use. I just say stick with the CAT Gen 7, 6 or 7, or the Soft T Wide. Those are approved. They've been around. They're battlefield tested, and they're proven to work. Get the other ones at your own risk. Another thing that would be good to have is it's called a SWAT T. It's not necessarily it's not a tourniquet per se as much as the CAT or the Soft T Wide, but it can be used as such, but it also can be put on. It's fairly wide, and you can tighten it down as you go, and it can constrict and create a tourniquet-like effect without a windlass. So that's something, especially if you have small children or something like that you may need to be able to use, because the other tourniquets don't quite work on arms or limbs less than 5 inches. So that's just something to keep in mind. Get some training, even if it's just a Red Cross CPR class. Seek out and look around. Find a Stop the Bleed class. They're still going on. The life you save could be someone that you really care about, and it could be your own. So just, get some medical training, learn about medical, even if you just read about it, get a tourniquet, practice, learn about, bandaging, things of that nature, learn about the March algorithm, to take care of, a trauma, someone that's had some trauma, learn how to treat shock. Shock is probably one of the leading killers of people, more so than gunshot wounds, major trauma. Shock is generally what kills people. So that pretty much closes out the gear portion of this podcast. I want to thank Phil and Andrew over at the Matter of Facts podcast for having me on. It was a blast. We had a great time. It was a great conversation. And I really hope that I can make it over there again. I want to thanks James over at the Prepper Broadcasting Network for indulging me and throwing my podcast up there last Friday. And again, continued thanks John Jeffers of the Contra Radio Network for continuing to post my podcasts there. I really appreciate all the support. I want to thank my one Patreon. I don't know if I did it last episode. My one Patreon. You know who you are. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it's a confidence booster. Thank you to all of those that have told me how much they are enjoying the podcast. It means a whole lot to me. It really, really does. It hits home. And Mark, thank you for suggesting this topic. I know I didn't go into a lot of great detail, but it's a resource to get you started and somewhere to look. So thank you, Mark. Thank you for suggesting it. And thank you for your positive feedback from the podcast, on the podcast. So having said all that, stay situationally aware. Keep your head on a swivel. Keep your eyes up. Keep your head up. Keep your head, if you're out on the street, keep your head out of the phone. What happened in Virginia the other week is a tragedy. It's terrible. I don't know what makes people think that killing their fellow coworkers is a solution. It's not. If you've got a problem, if you're depressed, if you're having an issue, talk to somebody. Reach out. Call the suicide prevention hotline. Get help. Reach out. Suicide and killing other people is not the solution. It is not the solution. So anyway, having said all that, I want to thank you all again for listening, for coming, liking, and sharing on Facebook. come on over to Patreon. I'd love to have some $2 patrons, just something, a little bit of something, to kind of keep this going. It does cost money, but hey, I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it because I enjoy it. I want to be able to convey information, and I want to get it out there. I hope to be able to get some interviews in. Phil has said he'll come on and talk about his book, American Insurgent. It's a great story. He did a great job for a first-time author. He kicked it. He knocked it out of the park. So, very good job, Phil. Last but not least, I want to say, God bless you all, and God bless America. And I'm adding this on the end. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255, available 24 hours a day. If you need help, get help. God bless.